Hey there, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sean, and this is Sean Turns Up the Volume. I actually wrote down what I'm going to say today, so I've got that in front of me, and I'm gonna kind of read from that, but not word for word, because there's like nothing worse than a presentation where somebody just like reads things slowly, verbatim. You ever been in one of those presentations, maybe in high school or college, or maybe a bit, maybe at your work, a business presentation, something where they're just like reading off the screen and it's terrible. I want to aim for not doing that to you today, because otherwise people aren't going to want to view that and you're not going to stick around. So what I wanted to talk about today, what with New York City voting in a socialist who also identifies as Muslim as the new mayor, this 34-year-old guy, how much mayoral experience or preparatory experience does he have to be mayor of New York? At the age of 34. That's probably the least of New York's problems. But they voted in a socialist. Let's call it what it is. It voted in a communist. These are the same things. These are synonyms. And it's funny watching these interviews. I'm just seeing some clips of interviews where maybe the interviewer asks him about, well, he's called a communist, and he's going, I'm not a communist. I'm a democratic socialist. Like making this like it's this different thing, and then the interviewer, the softball interviewer, will just like go along with it. Or I saw one clip where the interviewer was talking to a conservative, and the conservative is calling him out as a communist, and the interviewer's like, well, no, he doesn't identify as a communist. He calls himself a democratic socialist. It's just like you've got the media holding his water. You can see the bias there when the media is holding the water of a Democrat politician, one in this case as who's part of the Democratic Socialists of America, holding the water in order to argue that against conservatives who are challenging. Imagine a media where, can you imagine a liberal media that would actually like take the side of a Trump policy and argue on behalf of it like that? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if they did that in the way that they held the water for the Biden administration or for Kamala or for Obama? You know, imagine if what would that look like? What would it look like if they did it fairly and just like chose to just challenge like either way, like play devil's advocate, like if they tried to be unbiased by pushing back on either side, like that would be more fair than what they do, and the bias is unreal. Anyway, so there's softball questions being asked. He's not really being challenged on this thing. Like why not try to get more clarity? What does it mean to be a democratic socialist, to be part of the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America? I spent a little time visiting the DSA website, the Communist Party USA website, and honestly, the rhetoric looks the same. The policies they stand for look to be the same. It looks like just the same stuff. The socialists support the same things as the communists. You know, you look back through history and it's like the Soviet Union. Well, they were communists. That was communism. That was bad. They were the United United Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR. I might be mixing up where socialist falls in that. I mean, United Socialist States. The USSR has socialist in the name. They identified as socialist. The communists identified as socialists. The Chinese communists identify as socialists. Like all the communists, they identify as socialism because they are synonyms. Like socialism, as I understand it today in this minute, is like considered the process of moving towards communism, with communism being like the little utopic light at the end of the tunnel where everybody's living in peaceful kumbaya, like after the bloody revolution where they killed everybody who knew how to manage, knew how to lead, everybody who wanted to hold on to the capitalist world and those kind of freedoms and way of doing things. After all those people were murdered via bloody revolution, the communists that are left, they will live in the utopic, classless, amoral, hedonistic society of whatever it is they're making, being somehow hyper abundantly productive and all of that. And I'm going to speak to kind of more of the ridiculous in that later on in this. But okay, so there's not this. The left cares not a bit to tease out like what's the difference between socialism and communism. What's his like? Okay, if he's a democratic socialist, whatever that means, that's somehow different from communism or Marxism, then how is it different? How would he articulate that it's different? Who are the philosophers and the thinkers of socialism that diverge from Marx? Who are the people that, like, what are his beliefs really? What are his economic, social, political beliefs in genuinely? Does he even believe morally in things like it's wrong to lie or deceive people? Or does he believe in, what is it, utilitarianism of, like, I was just reading about like Trotskyism, like within Marxism, within communism, the idea that communism is inevitable, that the ends justifies the means, so long as it's working towards communist ends, so long as it's going to support the workers' party of the world and move things towards communism, then it's justified. Like, is that his stance? If it is, he wouldn't even admit it. You couldn't even trust him, someone who's a socialist who believes in that utilitarian kind of perspective. Like, they wouldn't tell you that. Which also goes for, like, Mamdani is also a Muslim. And so there's something called, I might say this wrong, but called like Taqiyya. And it's this idea that Muslims can lie to the non-believer, disbeliever, to people who are not Muslims for the sake of jihad, for the sake of spreading Islam throughout the world. The struggle of Islam is the struggle against the world, for the struggle for Islam to take over the world, for everybody to be under Allah, everybody to be under Islamic rule and Sharia law. And so within Islam, then, for a true believer of Islam, that, like, this is part of it. This is a doctrine that's part of it that would allow lying, deceiving people, so long as it moves the cause forward. So both of the ideologies that someone like Mamdani believes in, by identifying both as socialist and as a Muslim, both justify potentially lying and being deceptive. Of course, part of that would be then, well, if you asked him what he believes, if that is what he believes, then he could just still lie to you. Now, this is different in a sense than just that politicians will lie. Politicians can be self-interested, doing things for the sake of power. Of course, all political systems are corrupted by the people in them. They're only as good as the people in them and the systems themselves. You know, power, opportunity to get power and wealth these are sinful things. These are corrupting things and can corrupt people. So there's that element, but that's different than actually, like, the willingness to lie to benefit yourself or even the party is different than fundamentally having an ideology where you believe that it is morally okay, it is morally good. It's not just about your own. It's not just about, like, your own selfish self-interest. It's actually seen as being a wider means of this is the right thing to do, and that's baked into both. And of course, that is not something being teased out. That would be, you'd have to look into how does this person show up in other areas? What are other video clips and recordings you have, right? Because there are recordings and things of of someone like Mamdani, of other political figures, where you can go like, wait a minute, they said this behind like closed doors, or they said this amongst like their people, they said this with the elites, or he talks this way when he's talking to Muslims, but he talks this way when he's talking to Democrats. Like you get these different faces of the person, and so like that's where you could tease out. You look, I watched a video where it was talking about the kind of rap music he made, and Mamdani was celebrating, telling people in his rap song to look up this group of people who were convicted of aiding terrorism. I can't remember what they were called, like the something five. What was it? I'm gonna have to look it up. Maybe I'll put it in the video. The Hamas five. I don't know. But so even before becoming a citizen, he's vocalizing in his music support for people who support terrorists. Okay, and this is who New York City voted in to be the do-gooder savior through socialist policies, the savior of New York. I noted that in one of the interviews I was watching from him, that he was like throwing Andrew Cuomo under the bus, saying that he's the candidate of Trump and linking him to Trump. And so I think we're going to see this new tactic probably coming from the socialist side of the Democratic Party, where they're going to go the old guard. Well, they're not radical enough, accuse them of being soft, accuse them of being aligned with the right, just attach Trump to them, and that ignorant voters will just like jump on that. Well, the DSA socialist person says that the standard Democrat politician who's been in is aligned with Trump in some way, and then go, oh my gosh, anything. If you just say somebody's aligned with Trump, then you've just like ignited them on fire. You go, stay away from that. Continuing, so as far as this like democratic socialism thing, I think that the assumption is something like people think of Europe, of Nordic countries, of sort of this like socialism light, where there is still like a democratic process as far as picking politicians and the way government is run, and there's still actually a lot of capitalism taking place, but they pay like extremely high taxes. They're paying like 45-50%, some ridiculous amount of taxes. I think there's countries even higher than that, where you're working, and half of your labor and your choice over what you're done, what you get to do with your money. You go to work, you labor, you spend your time, your energy, your life, your knowledge, your skills. You spend that, you do that, and then the government comes, the socialist government, and we've got way too much socialism going on in America already because we pay crazy amounts of taxes, and the founding fathers would have already declared independence against the federal government if they lived today, seeing the Fed as an authoritarian bureaucratic king sort of thing, because like they got pissed off over like 2% of taxes and taxes on tea, and overthrew a king because of it and fought a war over it. And we pay, like, if you combine all the layers of taxes, we're paying like as much as these socialist countries potentially. You get taxed on your income, you get taxed when you buy things, you get taxed on your car, you get taxed on your fuel, you get taxed on everything. Everything is being taxed, and it's taxed on multiple layers. And then the Democrats and the socialists come along and go, well, we have even more pet projects and even more free stuff we want to give out, so you need to pay even more taxes. Anyway, so so we're much more socialism in America. We've got much more socialism in America than than we want to admit or something. But so these European countries, like, they've got this mix of they do have this mix of democratic style while also being like half capitalist. You get to keep, the government's generous enough to let you keep a bit of your money, but things are also very expensive. You're going to drive a tiny car if you can afford one at all. It's going to be really expensive. You're not going to have air conditioning. Paying for electricity and heat is going to be really expensive, especially with phony baloney climate change initiatives and things like that. And they're going to control your speech. So they're going to harass you or arrest you because of your speech on the internet. Maybe they're going to take your farm away from you because of your cow farts. So the democratic socialism going on in Europe is already revealing. You can see it through the UN, through the World Economic Forum, and the types of people that go there. You can see how in the short time that Europe has embraced socialism, just what would this be? Just since World War II or something? I don't know. I don't know enough history on this, but England, European countries, Nordic countries, like they went the way of socialism. It's like this socialism light, and they got free this and free that, and it's free healthcare and free transportation and different things. And the free of it is that somebody pays for it, and that you end up paying for it. And even if you're not the one taxed paying for it, if you're somehow managing to not be the one taxed pay for it, if the benefits you receive are greater than the taxed monies that you're paying into the system, then you're still paying for it in the sense that what it does to society is destructive, and that more power is being given over to the government, and that the government is deciding what to do with these funds, that there's graft involved, that there's waste involved, that there's just a different and negative incentive structure involved when you've got the government getting to decide how to spend the money, what to spend the money on, instead of you who did the labor getting to spend the money. The higher the taxes, the more you are a slave of government. I mean, that's just the way it is. We don't voluntarily pay taxes. Frankly, I think taxes should be figured out in a way that are done voluntarily, and that would be like the most just system. Like, you get to decide how much you want to pay in. To how much government do you want? You can pay into it. Oh, you want taxes to be higher? Great. You just pay more yourself. You want it to be more? Then choose to pay more. You want it to be less? You pay less. And you're going to get more or less services because of that, but you're not going to be forced. And so naturally, a system like that would require government to be much smaller. It would require people to do much more things for themselves. I think that would be great. Anyway, no government's ever going to give up that kind of power to forcefully tax us. But so you're always going to have some compelled taxation going on in the world. We're never going to get away from that. But the amount that is taken away is the amount that you go and you labor, and then somebody else goes, I'm going to take that from you. The government goes, I'm going to take that from you. You did that for the government, for them to decide. And that's compelled. I mean, what is it to work by the barrel of a gun, by the threat of being arrested, so that somebody else takes and benefits from that labor by their force against you? That's a nasty system. The left wants more of it. So you got these European nations, I think, are framed as like America could be like that. And there's a lot of issues with that from of course, there's the thing like the Nordic countries are more socially homogenous. They're very small countries. You know, they got small populations and things like that, which make their socialist kind of policies more expensive. Of course, they still have the problems of certain things being very expensive. There's just the quality of life there as far as their economic power and different things like that are different than our own. What was I going to say? But the tendency is still towards that. The socialism is still not enough. That the socialism of the half capitalist democratic socialism is still not good enough. These countries still go along with EU initiatives. They go along with importing tons of foreign immigrants, asylum seekers who come in to exploit the welfare state. The leaders of these countries still want this kind of thing to happen. So it's still like, even in the midst of them seeming to have produced, at least for a short period of time, as their debt grows, just as our debt grows, like everybody, like you can print money so far, but the debt is growing, and European countries are also steeped in debt. Socialist policies steep countries in debt. America is steeped in debt because of socialist policies. Europe is steeped in debt because of socialist policies. So the idea that these socialist countries over in Europe are like working and that this is the dream is a fantasy, because it is doomed to collapse, just as something will happen in America at some point. You can't have like $100 trillion in debt and it not still have a damaging impact, whether that means our money just ever increasingly has less value and our quality of life and how everything is in our country goes further to crap, or whether it happens very suddenly in some sort of catastrophic means. Like, you can't just perpetually have massive increasing debt and increasing spending and pay for like importing the third world, because there's just too much of the third world. You can't have some hundreds of millions, maybe a couple of 100 million really working productive people across America and Europe carrying the load of all of the freeloaders in America, all of the freeloaders in Europe, and all of the potential freeloaders, people who want to come into our country just to exploit it, just to get what they can get, live off of it, send remittances back to their home countries, bring more family here to get them on welfare, send that welfare back to their home countries, bring more of them here to get them on welfare. Like this becomes a top-heavy thing that is unsustainable. So the working socialist countries, well, it's not going to keep working, for one, but also they're also still moving towards more authoritarianism. So just as I'd mentioned, in them moving towards censorship, towards more controls under the auspices of protecting the climate, different things like that, subverting their own countries, their cultures by the mass immigration movement, policies like those. Like, there's still a reason for that. It's still this destruction of the culture. It wasn't enough to reach this place of like, wow, you've got your socialist, you've got the closest thing to socialist paradise going, like snapshot, keep it like that. I don't know, Norway, Denmark, whatever, like just keep it like that. No, that's not enough for the globalist Marxists who want more power, who want to still move things towards overthrowing all the old ways of the West. Marx mocks and was against the half-measure socialists, the bourgeois socialists who want to hold on to some elements of capitalism and have elements of socialism. He mocks and derides them in the Communist Manifesto. They existed back then, they exist now. What kind of socialist is Mamdani? Does he really just want some free stuff but not the whole shebang, or is he really a dyed-in-the-wool communist, or is socialism just a means towards political power? He can play the game, get in with the socialists, DSA, get in with the Democratic Party, gain political party, but is his loyalty really to Islam and towards bringing more Islam into the West, get more Islamic immigrants into New York, push for these kinds of policies, push for more sympathy that Muslims are the oppressed and America is evil, and white conservatives are the evil oppressors that must be opposed, which gains sympathy from the left and then allows more of these policies to keep going, and so to transform the West into more of an Islamic state, just as is going on in Europe. Is that really the end game? That would be my suspicion, is that even his claim to being socialist is really a facade. It's probably a a pragmatism. I mean, he maybe he believes in those economic policies, but maybe it's really just a means towards an end, and he's okay with that. Maybe there is a genuine convergence of belief in socialist policies and and Islamic rule or something like that that come together. I don't know. These kind of seem like the things that you'd want to vet out of a 34-year-old politician who's only become a citizen like 7 years ago in 2018. It seems like you'd want to, I don't know, vet the person who's going to be the mayor of New York, but maybe not. Maybe just hold your breath and vote for him anyway, New York, because that's what you did. Let's see. I wanted to note, like, given the history of socialism, like, why would you believe somebody like Mamdani or AOC or Bernie when they describe themselves as socialist but not communist? Like, why would you believe that? Why would you not be skeptical, like, inherently? Like, given the history of price controls, of rent controls, of all the free stuff, and how damaging it is, how it doesn't work, how it corrupts society, how it just blows up budgets, how it disincentivizes people to work, how it just promotes lazy, entitled people. We can see that in America. It didn't work in communist countries. It doesn't work in America and European countries. It's destructive. It decreases these countries' GDP. It decreases economic power. And it involves more government control. It's the same people saying they don't want kings and calling Trump a tyrant are the people that want socialism, which means just the government just by fiat just tells business owners what to do, that just tells landlords what to do. If you've got an apartment, here's what you can and cannot charge. Like, if you're a business, here's what you can and cannot charge, a price for something. Just more control of telling ultimately people, what you can do. If you own a business, like, you're a person owning a business. Like, that's one of the ways to better yourself in our society, because people move through classes in our society. You're not stuck in, like, well, you're just poor, and so you're just poor and just going to be, just have to be generationally poor. You're just in a lower class and perpetually there. People naturally, in America and free and capitalist kinds of countries, you move out of those positions. You may be poor in your 20s as you're figuring life out. You get an education, you better yourself, you take shit jobs for a while and move your way up and find and develop skills, knowledge, move into management, be an entrepreneur and start a business, buy a place, fix it up, rent it out. These are means of moving out of the proletariat, the poor working class party of Marx. Like, you could, it's fluid. Like, older people inherently tend to have more money than younger people. Like, you save up money, you invest it. Anybody can engage in the stock market. Like, these opportunities exist for anyone to move up and better yourself. These are the opportunities that we have in America. You don't even have these same opportunities in communist China, where you're not allowed to invest in the stock market like we are here. Like, all they can invest in is, like, property, and that's a whole messed up thing there. I don't know enough about it to speak to it, but I've watched other videos on it, and it's crazy and not good. It's put, like, your life savings into a empty apartment that you can't afford to live in, and in a building that's not that nobody's living in, and that's already deteriorating and built like crap. Anyway, that's a separate thing. Why would you think these things are going to work this time? Why would you think Mamdani, the 34-year-old guy from Uganda who identifies as a Muslim socialist, why would you think this guy and these policies that that lack of experience, lack of life knowledge, combined with the worst economic ideas, tried, tested, failed, that go against just basic common sense, individual rights and principles. Like, why would you think, yeah, but it's gonna work this time? I just don't even understand. Democratic socialism, what does this mean? Okay, so according to Karl Marx, okay, this is just going to be a little rehash. Like the proletariat is considered the majority class, that most people are would fall into the proletariat. This is his like 19th century industrialization view, and it just kind of like gets carried over. The idea is that most people would fall into the oppressed class, the proletariat class. That the world is made up of oppressed and oppressors. The Democratic Party has framed the right, conservatives, as the class of oppressors. Billionaires and rich, if they're not liberal, are the class of oppressors. They also frame things in terms of like that basically rich people are Republicans, and they just like ignore all of the massive amounts of rich people and billionaires that are liberal leftist proponents of socialism and things like Lenin. I believe it was Lenin, has a quote mocking that he would sell the capitalists the rope by which they would hang themselves. So people who are billionaires and identify as socialists are doing that very thing. For all his faults and evils, Lenin knew how to call it, I guess, in some ways, because he nailed that, the bourgeois silver spoon socialist, who the elite, the rich politician, the rich Hollywood actor that thinks that they're going to be on the right side of things when the socialists really have power. I don't know. Don't hold your breath. A lot of people in the Soviet Union were sent to gulags. People of all classes. So anyway, there's the manifestation of this oppressor-oppressed ideology and the anti-white rhetoric of critical race theory. Like this is baked in to liberal ideology. It's been mainstreamed. Obama really blew the lid off of this. It's since been mainstreamed by the left. Like this is normal liberal stuff. I've seen some clips where liberal news media has been claiming that they like never called Trump Hitler, never compared him to Nazis. So at some point they might claim that they don't believe in the oppressor-oppressed view of things. So let's make sure to hold their feet to the fire that this is what they believe. This is fundamentally rooted in Marxism. It's fundamental to socialism, and it's their rhetoric is absolutely full of it. It's everywhere that our society is oppressive and in every sort of way, and in everything harms minorities, and that all of the solutions are socialist solutions. Okay, so with that, the proletariat is seen as the majority. They're seen as the ones not holding power. Democracy, I'm gonna just give a basic, I don't know, definition or something of democracy as being that people can vote. You have the right to choose your rulers. You have the right to vote and be represented. And democracy is that the majority rules, right? That if 51 out of 100 vote for somebody, vote in whatever ruler, that's the ruler that wins. So the majority gets to rule, and that's part of what makes democracy, in some sense, really stupid and flawed. It's why we have a constitutional republic. It's why we've got the different branches of government, why we have Congress, the Supreme Court, a presidency, and they've got different roles so that all power is not just decided by like a single vote, right? And we have a constitution with Bill of Rights, so the constitution means that the government has to abide by laws, that ultimately law is above government. We're all supposed to be held to the same standards. As like in the past, it would have been like a constitutional monarchy would mean a king is confined within the rules of that constitution, and so that would be an improvement over a king that can just rule doing whatever he wants. So constitutional republic is, of course, superior to that, because then the people get to vote and have a say, but also we have different branches of government, so all power isn't in one place. We also have a Bill of Rights, so our rights as people, as individuals, are protected from the government. It's the Bill of Rights is our rights. It's not what the government does or provides. It's what our rights are as citizens. It's a barrier to the government. The majority are seen as the proletariat within the socialist view of things, within the Marxist view of things. Okay, so the role of the democratic socialist then is to represent the workers of the country, the workers of the world, that since they are the majority, they ought to be the ones in power, that the democratic socialists, that the communists represent these workers group, this oppressed class. And then once they use democracy to get into power, so they'll say, I'm a democratic socialist and I'm not a communist. I'm the democratic socialist. It's different. I can't tell you how or why, but it's different. And then once they're voted into power, then they use that to dismantle the present system. Okay, they don't actually believe in democracy because it's just the means to the ends. It's just the means to obtain that power. They view it as, if they represent the majority, they represent the workers of the nation, the workers of the world, and they represent the majority, and thus they must justly remain in power forever from that point, because they're the majority. So of course, that's why you have one party rule in communist countries. It's why the CCP rules. It's the People's Party. They represent the people, so of course they should rule, right? This is their logic. It's democratic because democracy means the majority rules, and they claim to represent the workers, so they represent the workers and they get to rule. And so upon having that party and that power, being the People's Party, the ones in control, now you've got a single party system, a state-controlled system, state-controlled media, schools, business, and economic functions are all going to be taken over. That's all part of what socialism is about. Of course, like the gentle socialist light would say, well, only to degrees. They won't go too far. They won't go like the communists go, like the socialists of the communist country. They won't do that kind of socialism. They're going to do a gentler, nicer kind of socialism, and one that's just gonna kind of work. Just trust them. It's going to work. And they want you to believe that they're going to keep the democratic process going. That sure, you'll still get to vote. There will still be political systems. They're just another party. Somehow they'll make us into a socialist country, but still allow parties that aren't socialist. Doubt that. It's that if you've watched some of the videos, I mentioned a video in one of the other ones I just posted, there's these clips of DSA members talking about what they really want. They really want to overthrow our system. They want to throw our system of government. They want to overthrow like how we do things in America. So I mean, it is the overthrow of like everything, and that includes the democratic process. That includes like our constitutional republic. That includes the Constitution. None of these things are sacrosanct to them. All of it is viewed as having to go, that they've got a better way. And they're going to get in power. They're going to use democracy to get in power. Marx talks about democracy. And that's the democracy that once the proletariat is in rule, then democracy has spoken. They're the ones in charge. Which brings me to the oppressed narrative of the ideology. Socialists like Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio, like DSA, the Communist Party USA, CPUSA, like they want top-down authoritative government as the solution to all of society's problems, that every problem of society, small or large, that government should be involved. I think Mamdani is quoted as saying, like, there's no problem too small. I think I saw that on Matt Walsh. Like, nothing too small. So the government is going to hone in on the smallest thing, and we're going to address this issue. So your life can be under a microscope as far as how involved it will be. You can see that in communist countries. You can see that in North Korea and how they do things. There is nothing that the socialist, the democratic socialist communist doesn't want to have control over in your life. There's no place that government wouldn't be allowed to speak. There's no place that government wouldn't be allowed to rule on, to regulate, and things like climate change are just mechanisms to justify it and to get naive, gullible liberal people to go like, ooh, that sounds really good, right? Because all of the buy-in to socialism is just all this like feel good, like, oh my gosh, that would be nice if there was no homelessness and no bigotry and no this and no that, and just all our problems will be solved by the big government. The government will magically just solve all the things. If you look at their websites, you see that they stand for the same thing. So the Democrats, Democratic Socialists of America, Communist Party USA, they all present themselves as being able to solve all of life's problems: racism, discrimination, ableism, poverty, homelessness, inequalities of every kind, hatred, like a human emotion for that which you don't like, hatred, transphobia, every concoction of oppression, victimhood that you could possibly come up with. The socialists present as that they are going to be the saviors of that, which is like going beyond it's not just this is what politicians do, this is what political parties do. This is a like brainwashing propaganda that is beyond a party. This is an ideology that government is the solution to all of life's problems. That if you give all of yourself, all of your autonomy, all of your rights, all of your control, all of your potential work, labor, effort, all of yourself over like an infant to be controlled and dictated by the government, that they will thus hand you over solutions and care and baby you and solve all of your problems. Like it's this strange, childish, immature abandonment of personal responsibility, which of course you can see on the left how they blame everything and everyone. And this is what communists do too in communist countries. It's always, why are they impoverished? Why do they suck so bad? Why are their economies so shitty? It's always because of the imperial capitalist West. It's because of trade embargoes. It's because of this. It's because of that. There's always excuses. It's because of counter-revolutionaries, right? Lenin, Stalin throw millions of people into gulags because when their stupid policies and evil policies don't work, the most idiotic things don't work, then they blame it on someone. They blame it on the people who they directed to institute the policies, or they blame it on just average, anyday people who are suffering under these systems. Just like, well, just nab those people up and ship them off to prison or send them to the firing squad. Your production numbers aren't up. Like, you seeded a frozen lake and it didn't grow into something. Like, well, off to the gulag for you. I can't believe that putting seed on frozen ground or whatever didn't sprout up and work. Like, that's an actual, I can't remember if it was ground or a lake or what. I think it was frozen ground maybe. That's an example from the Gulag archipelago. Like, whenever the insane, stupid, wrong policies of socialism don't work, they just blame somebody else. And because that's part of the worldview, that's part of the ideology of oppressor oppressed, that there must be blame. Like it's just an ideology of resentment. And so I wanted to talk about some of the basic principles just embedded within socialism. They might not claim these themselves, but if you just look and study at socialism, communism, Marxism, these things are there. One, the government is the solution to all of life's problems. And I'm going to point out the sin aspects of this. That is idolatry from a Christian perspective. That is idolatry to view government in that way, that it will just solve everything. That inequalities are all caused by people, okay? That if anybody has more or better or different or whatever, it's because of people. If you don't have whatever, it's because of people. It's this attribution of malice. It's this false attribution of malice and hatred towards other people, that you must be oppressed in some way, and that it can be solved by government. And this is a false attribution of what the problem is. Right? It's a false solution. So they're naming the problem as people are oppressing you, which is wrong. And then they're naming the solution as authoritative, just government solves anything, everything, which is a false solution. That's just wrong. Whatever you don't have is because someone took it from you. And so the government will take it from them and give it back to you. These are sins like covetousness, envy, resentment, greed, and theft. These are baked into socialism. So anybody who's like Christian socialists, or Jesus was a socialist, or the early church in Jerusalem was socialism taking place, no. This is all of these sins of wanting other stuff that other people have and taking it from them taking place. This is not at all the voluntarism going on in the early church, which also didn't work, which is why that didn't continue. And it's just pretty obvious, like what with socialism being like inherently atheistic, Marxism is inherently atheistic and hostile to all religions, as religions are basically another source of power. It's considered bourgeois to be religious, to have religious beliefs. And like socialism is hostile to religion. Like they are at odds. So why you would think for a moment that socialism and Christianity get along at all is mind-blowing. But I know there are people who think that. Anyway, I would challenge that. People will let's see, I think I'm on 4. People will inherently thrive if given free stuff taken by other people. This is a false view of mankind. It's an immoral incentive structure, right? Because you're disincentivizing people to work. You're disincentivizing people to take personal responsibility for their lives and for the consequences that will inhibit bad decision making. If you know that there's not free money out there, if you get knocked up and you're going to have a baby and you're not going to be able to take care of it, then that's going to have an inhibitory factor on society. There's a reason why society didn't function like that in the past, because it wasn't rewarded. When you reward bad decisions, bad choices, and you take away or soften the consequences of those things, you get more bad choices, okay? Which is more lawlessness, which is more sinfulness. And so again, this goes counter to Christianity. If you've read the Bible and read the New Testament, Jesus is not a fan of lawlessness. The wicked are described in terms of being the lawless. So an anarcho-communist state is, the socialist state is absolutely at odds with Christianity. Anyway, that could be its own video. The false view of mankind is just inherent in just what I described. You're disincentivizing good choices, you're incentivizing bad choices, and we're inherently just behavioral psychology, whether it's with animals or with people. Just know that like you give the food pellet to reinforce the bad thing, or you give just the free food pellet, like the animal is going to go for that. It's like, don't feed the birds. Why? You get more birds. Okay? Like this is how lots of people operate. Oh, things is the reason why human civilization exists is because hunger is unpleasant. Being thirsty is unpleasant. Being exposed to the cold, to the rain, to the sun is unpleasant. These are basic things that drive people to go hunt, forage, tame the land, produce and acquire food, build shelter, build things, build inventions to make life a little easier because life is very hard. Like, the suffering drives humanity towards what is better, and when you just take away any consequences and just soften things, encouraging people to be to not take care of themselves and reinforce that they're entitled to it, creates just really awful human beings. Okay, what else comes from this oppressor? Those are some of the principles I was laying out there. I think I laid out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 principles that are just inherent to socialism. You're going to get that no matter whether one calls themselves a democratic socialist or a communist or whatever. Now, as far as socialism solving all of life's problems, all of the problems that the left claims are because of conservatives, all the isms, racisms, and phobias, and discriminations, and all the things. I want to say, how on earth would encouraging viewing people as your enemy, that they're oppressing you in this oppressor-oppressed framework, how would encouraging that perspective, that if somebody else has something you want, you don't have, even though that could be because of biology, circumstances, merit, all kinds of reasons for why that is, that resenting, hating them, viewing them as an oppressor, viewing them as having taken something from you, that there's some systemic societal reason for why they have it and you don't. How does that solve anything? How does that create people getting along better with each other? How does that create more empathetic, loving perspectives between people when your perspective is somebody out there is oppressing you? They're an oppressor and you're oppressed. You're a victim and they're doing something bad against you and they've taken something from you and that should be yours and you should take that back by the hand of the government, or maybe directly, just as you can see from the people knocking their EBT, their SNAP stuff, saying they're going to steal from stores. It's baked into their ideology. It's conveyed in mainstream liberalism and mainstream media. It's being pushed into all of our professions. It's being pushed into the sciences to look at everything through this critical theory, Marxist lens to view. I mean, things like math, just math is viewed as oppression. Just speaking English well, let alone having it be like the language of the nation. These things are viewed as systemic oppression, which just feeds resentment. It feeds division. How are you supposed to get people getting along better? How are you supposed to have a nation of people getting along peacefully? Like, how is that supposed to work when your whole ideology is grounded on everybody? If there's two of you on an island, one of them is oppressing you and one of them is the oppressor. So you're either the oppressor or oppressed. Well, who the hell wants to be the one who's the oppressed one, right? Like, that's baked into it too. Like, if you can be the one in power, like, of course you're going to be the one that wants to be in power. And of course that's their stance too. How does discrimination get solved? By telling like black liberals, minority liberals, that they're oppressed by conservatives, by white conservatives. What if there were no conservatives anymore to blame? What if there were no like white people anymore to blame? Like, what would happen? This view, this social condition that all relationships are oppressor and oppressed would still be there. It's still baked into the ideology. It would still be the beliefs of the two people on the hypothetical island. Somebody's oppressing somebody else. If there's more than one of you, somebody's oppressing someone. The power dynamic is inherently tainted. That's the Marxist view. That's the socialist view. That means that in this situation, that would mean either minorities become themselves the oppressors, or that they'd be oppressed by someone else. There'd have to be, the Democratic Party would have to come up with some other boogeyman. I mean, if there was only a Democratic Party, if there was only one party left and they did away with everyone who was conservative, like, who do you blame then? Who do you have excuses about? Like, it would, the unity of the proletariat to destroy the bourgeois, of the hateful leftists to get rid of the conservative that they blame everything on, would inherently be torn apart, would have to be torn apart, because there's still oppressor and oppressed. So now, blip, well, you have like the democratic socialist against like the, I don't know, old school progressive liberal or something, them blaming and fighting each other out. If the feminists won all of their victories, even to have men and women's sports in locker rooms, and there were no more conservative straight men to blame for all of life's problems, what would become the narrative then? Is there simply no more oppression, or rather would they become the oppressors themselves? Would they become the oppressors of men then? Well, if there's men around and they've got their matriarchy, wouldn't the men be the oppressed ones? Or just anybody who disagrees with them, I guess, would become those of the oppressed, if they were to hold the power. And yet, wouldn't there still be problems? Wouldn't there still be inequalities? Once the victims, the oppressed, gain power and become the oppressors, do they still hold the victim card? Do you still get to claim to be the oppressed ones once you're in control? I mean, after all, public schools are dominated largely by liberals, and yet the left has no problem throwing public schools under the bus, saying that they're not funded enough, that there's still a racist systemic bias built into them. Sorry, liberal teachers, you didn't do well enough. You're still part of the toxic systemic problem. You have African Americans, Black people in all positions of power in our country, and I can't remember her name, but one of Biden's White House speakers, who goes around constantly telling everybody that she is a Black bisexual woman. She's got all of this intersectionality. So never mind that she like worked at the White House. Never mind, it doesn't matter how high she rose. She's still playing all these cards about how she's a victim. So I guess no matter how much power or control you get as the victim, you still get to claim that if you're in the oppressed class, no matter how much power you have, you still get to claim to be oppressed, even when you're the one with the power. If the socialist baristas of Starbucks and the welfare kings and queens managed to have their bloody revolution, they've killed off the bourgeois. They've killed off the CEOs, the managers, the supervisors, the middle-class professionals and shop owners, and everyone who dared to express that they actually liked and benefited from the freedoms of capitalism. If they did all this and threw off their chains, and the workers of the world united, yet oppressor and oppressed would still be ever present as an underlying tenant, as an underlying principle. So who would be oppressed next? Who is the oppressor in that situation? How do they manage to get any work done? How do they work at the factory? How do they work the farms? How do they divvy out all of the free stuff? How do they divvy out all of the labor that needs to get done? After all, in the Communist Manifesto, Marx said that the state would have to send people out of the cities, out into the fields to work, and to force things to become hyper-productive and just produce all kinds of everything once they've taken control. So never mind that they've killed the managers who knew how to lead and run things. Wouldn't any new leader who pops their head up become the new master and oppressor, right? How would you dare to stand up amongst your fellow communist comrade peers after the revolution and go like, well, maybe I can figure out how to like lead us to run the factory. That would be a good way to get your head taken off, a la the French Revolution, which Marx was a big fan of. Never mind, how do you actually make something impossible work? I mean, that's what socialism is. It is something impossible. It goes against human nature. It goes against economic laws. You still haven't solved the problem of oppression because the goalpost simply moves. How can it be any other way? Like, the basic tenet is oppressor versus oppressed is in every relationship, every social situation, just period. So there's this disconnect. If this is a truth, if this is true like gravity and has ever been present in human civilization, in the human psyche and interactions, if this is just a truism, which Marx makes it as, then never mind his little magical utopic skip to the end and everything is happy and the communists give up their state power and everybody is living kumbaya in a paradise classless society. He just skip to that part. He just hand waves away his whole principle of oppressor and oppressed and goes, it wouldn't be anymore. Okay, that after they've murdered everybody, after they've murdered all the religious people, after they've utterly destroyed all aspects of society and killed off all the people who knew how to work and who knew how to like manage and run things, and you've had a big massacre and civilization's been ruined, and you've got total state dictatorship control over everything. They're just going to willingly give up the power, and everybody's going to get along kumbaya in a really wonderful, sort of hedonistic, super productive state. Wow, that convinces people. I'll talk about that more in a separate video on my Communist Manifesto commentary. Or is there an alternative and it's staring you in the face? Maybe the world isn't made up of oppressor and oppressors. After all, maybe the socialist Marxist trope is actually entirely wrong, a disgusting, hateful, myopic lens of demonic resentment that is designed to increase the suffering of all mankind while masquerading as some sage wisdom. What if it is nothing more than a means of getting a bunch of people to be resentful, to throw off their functioning society, to burn their own house down so that a new ruler can take over under the guise of saving mankind from everything? King government, king dictator, every solution a state solution. That's socialism. What if Marx and socialists like him were just petty, controlling narcissists obsessed with their own ideas and lust for power, off the gullible and naive who would gladly give it to them if they promised them the world, promised them free stuff, golden pants? I remember watching Invader Zim back in the day, and how Zim, the alien, runs against, I think he's running against Dib for their school election, and he promises to cut off the children's legs, which gets like a boo. They're not a fan of that. And then he says he'll replace them with like pants made of gold. I could be remembering that wrong, but he promises them like gold pants. So it's mocking this idea of just like the socialist idea of just like promise the free stuff. And when it comes down to it, that's what it is, like the promise of free stuff, the promise of just this easy life. If you just hand over everything to the government will hand you back an easy life. That there must be evil, rich 1%ers that are standing in the way of you just having it all, having it easy. That life could just be so easy, and you could just have it to abundance. You'd hardly have to work. You have everything you want. You got a wonderful upper middle class lifestyle. If only you could pillage the evil rich that are standing in the way of that. That's socialism, just in a nutshell. And it is so evil and wrong for so many reasons. And New York City, you just voted that into power. So good luck with that. That's what I've got to say about this. I might do some editing here because I've got some pauses. My brain slows down sometimes. But let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think of these questions. And I will just keep working on material here, and see you next time. Thank you. Please like and subscribe.